Why are movie dog trainers so much better than other dog trainers? Why can they do the seemingly impossible? I'm Christophe Clugston, the Jedi Dog Master, and joining me is the last of the legendary Lassie trainers, Robert Weatherwax. We're going to delve into the paradigm shifts and the philosophies that I guarantee you've never heard before, and in fact will probably shock you. So get ready and gear up.
This is Season 2, Episode 2, and we're continuing as we're applying movie dog training to everyone. Every type of dog trainers out there, it's something they don't know about. I guarantee they don't know about all this. And some of the reasons why we're vastly different. And we're going to get into that. Again, we're going to follow an outline of giving the information and then fill in the blanks. But I got to warn everybody that a lot of this is very detailed, and we could spend hours and hours on each point. And to do that properly, we need to do that in person or through many different video calls or consultations. So keep that in mind, people, because we're the only two that are coming out saying this stuff. And I got to reiterate the fact that we're some of the last ones. We're the last Mohicans, as it were, out here. I'm talking about myself and also Robert Weatherwax, the last of the legendary Lassie trainers. And so get to us before we keel over, basically. So one of the things that's very important about this that changes us from everybody else is our paradigm shift. And this is huge. No one's thought about this. And when I start delving into this, you'll think, what is he talking about? And then later it'll probably sink in that, yeah, that's completely different. It is. We have one of the reasons that we're able to do things and accomplish things that other people are not. And I'm talking about some of the things that working with dogs at a distance, getting them to do behaviors other people are not able to do, and having them work in new surroundings and also work in places with actors. They're not just using the same person as a handler. This is one of the big differences between what we do with this, that they may not have ever seen the person that they're going to have to interact with before, and everything else with any type of dog sport, any type of even military. The handler is not somebody that just shows up at that moment. It's somebody who's worked with the dog many times. And in our case, you're working with the dog may have to work away from us, which we talked about in episode 1. It's one of the keys is distance, but working with humans that they've never met before. And then also, you don't know how that actor is going to be with dogs. Robert can fill in some stories there because I've done commercials mainly, but we're going to get into it. So there's a paradigm shift. And this is, again, like I want to make this very important. We have to have this paradigm shift. We have to shift our mind. We have to change everything from how you people who've learned as pet dog trainers or sport dog trainers or even tactical trainers have thought about it. It's much like switching the operating system in your computer. So you're working on a Windows platform, but then suddenly it's an Apple computer. The Windows program doesn't work on the Apple computer. You have to have a combination thing. So you go to Linux. They can use a totally different operating system to accomplish more. That it's more than just one system. And this is, a lot of people don't get this, but you've been given one type of operating system, and that operating system has been to work with the dog very close to you, and the one person only is going to work with that dog. That dog is going to be near you at all times. That's control. You're hung up on control. We aren't. So this change will also allow you to do totally new things and also incredible things that you've seen in Rin Tin Tin, or you've seen in the Lassie movies or the Lassie TV series, or some other work that we can talk about, but we'll definitely talk about those the most. So now this paradigm shift encompasses something very important, that there is a big contrast between position versus location. And most everyone else is training from position. Sit, a down, go, stand sometimes. Those are all positions. And when they want to train to heel, they're training it as a position. The dog is near your left knee, and that's the position he must maintain. And a position is static. Well, the location can change. And then when we're training dogs for location, I've got to tell you that This is vastly different than what everyone else is doing. This is why we use marks. Marks are part of where we put the location, but the locations can change. And then we don't care about the position and functional parts. And for real dogs that want to look natural, dogs that we work with are actors. So they can't look stiff and robotic. And they can't do unnatural things. They can't be looking at the trainer at all times. They can't be in a sit or a down. That's it, and hold that forever, because that's not what normal dogs would do. As long as they remain or stay at the location we want them in, then that's great. I got to reiterate the fact that the location is more functional and it's more real than what we wanted to do. Because again, we can take the marks and we can move those. We can move those from one location to another. So this makes it easier once the dog learns about these marks to go from one place to another. I mean, a different environment, from one environment to another. But when a dog is trained out of position, a sit or a down, that sit and down has to be trained again in many, many different environments, because the dog knows that position like a picture from exactly where he's at with you at that time. So if you're training your kitchen over and over and over, the dog can perform it in the kitchen, but he cannot do it in the Sahara Desert because he's never been there. But this is the difference with marks moving around. So we think about location over position. And I got to say some other things, that dogs learn location far better than they learn position. Position is not concrete to them. A location is. That's why I use pedestals, platforms, why we use a mark. It's a concrete thing. The dog knows when he's touching that mark that he's at the location. What does the position mean to him? It doesn't mean anything in his normal life. He doesn't think about positions. He thinks about locations. Where's that bone buried? Where's my house at? How do I get to the water? Where's the place that I urinate at? These are all locations. So we're tapping into what's natural for a dog and far easier to learn. These is more concrete, and that's a big secret to what we do. And we also, with this, we separate the stay from the position. Now, most people, especially now, are training, it's a sit. It means stay there until I tell you not to stay there. Or it's a down until I tell you not to be in a down. We don't like this because we have a separate command, if you want to call it that, for stay or remain, because it's like a safety on a gun. We want to have this separate so we can do things that you cannot do. For example, when we have a remain or a stay, we can do this when the dog is coming to us, a thing called the come easy, meaning coming to you slowly. We can tell the dog to stay in that position. Then that doesn't mean we have to give that position is the location there, but that doesn't mean, hey, the dog has to automatically sit, automatically has to go down. He holds his stand, and we can tell him to do other things at that location or to move on again. This is something that's vastly different than what other people are doing. This is what it changes everything, because we can have a location out of movement. Now, I want to say that it's very separate. I got to drive this home. It's separate than a stay, than what people are teaching dogs as a stay. Sit, stay. No, that is limited for what we're doing for acting purposes, because we don't know where we're going to have to tell the dog to stay. Like if we have the dog climbing up a ladder, maybe the script calls for us to tell the dog to stop partway up the ladder. What are you going to tell him with your training system out of position? You're going to tell him to sit on a ladder? He can't do that. To down on the ladder? Can't do that. But we train dogs to hold that position on that location. It may sound a little convoluted, but that's what it is. And that stay or remain, we all use different terms for what we're doing, can be done for climbing a ladder, coming back to us slowly, going away from us. Also, when you send a dog out on a go with, which we talked about last time a bit, we can also hold the dog, slow the dog down when he's doing the go with, so like he's hesitant to leave. And one of the big keys of showing that location is more important than position, again, is the dog going with John Wayne's horse, because he's meant to stay in the location of John Wayne's horse, even though he has to change position, as meaning he's on the left side, he's on the right side, he goes around obstacles, but he's maintaining the location. But if you train out a position, That's incorrect because he's got to be near the left side of the dog. The dog's got to be on the left side of the horse by the stirrup at all times. That won't work. That's not natural. That's not functional. So these are some of the very important things about the paradigm shift. I'm covering quite a bit because I want to make sure I get through this before we hand this over. So there are no automatic position changes, and that means we hate the automatic sit. We'll delve into that in a moment, and we don't like the focus healing that everyone is training. I consider them both crutches for trainers who are not at our level. And anyway, so I'm going to let Robert take over some parts, and I have a few other things to say when we come back. But this position versus location is incredibly important. I've covered a lot. I've done it quickly, but this, again, I'm giving you a listing of things that are different with us to say what are the points that he's getting to.
Well, it's the same thing that I'm just going to expand upon what you've been saying. But I will say that everything, when I see what I call institutionalized training out in the world, I see people trying to control their dogs, right? They're trying to keep them in one place, one position, more than a place, but in that position, as if that position was the place, right? And of course, everything's going sit, lie down, but how do you get the dog back up, right? Like once the dog's down in that position, can you get that dog to rise back to his feet from a distance? Or are you going to have to go in there and manually, I mean, we talked about this before, but if you make a dog sit, you have to have a position, a command that will get them out of that sit, right? And when I tell a dog sit, I might say sit, I might say sit, stay. They're not the same thing, right? The stay is conditional based on how long the dog has to be in that position before they have to go somewhere else. And of course, that's the thing I'm always thinking about as a movie trainer, that private trainers have to get out of their head, that the dog is that's not the end all. Like when they're staying, sitting, lying down, that's not the end of the thing. There's going to be something else that they're going to have to do, and they're going to have to be in a position where they can do it. Just the other day, I think I sent this to Christophe. It was from the later years of the Lassie series, the Holden episodes, where the dog is basically just with the two boys, right, with Larry Wilcox and the other character. But when you put a dog in a sit, suddenly the movements aren't the same. The dog's not reacting naturally the way they would if they were in a standing position. When I take a dog onto a set, I don't say, okay, you're going to go in front of the camera, we're going to sit. No, we don't do that. When we go in front of the camera, we get used to what's in that area. I'll bring them to a spot, a location. And I'll say, okay, this is location. I don't care if you sit or lie down. But what eventually happens when the dog gets relaxed is they'll sit down, right? Because they're relaxed. And that's fine, because that's a good way to gauge how comfortable the dog is with the cameras and the people and all this stuff going on. Now, if you put a dog in a sit position, especially a dog that's not particularly well adjusted to their environment, they're going to be more nervous because now they're put in a position that they feel like they can't get away if something happened. If one of these lights falls, I'm done. So now you've taken a dog that's a little bit nervous and made them more nervous because you haven't given them the freedom to choose their position first before you start rolling cameras. And when you're dealing with life is a movie. And everything that you're doing, you don't want to take a dog and go, okay, I'm going to teach your dog to sit and lie down, and that's it. No, I'm going to tell your dog to sit and lie down, and then we're going to teach him to go pick up something. And then we're going to have him maybe put his feet up over there. You know, there's things that they can do from there. And everything you teach a dog, it's kinetic energy. Everything you're teaching the dog leads to something else. But once you get a dog to lie down, there's so many things you could do in that position or in a sit position. So you always want to have the mobility to be able to go to a different position, have the dog back on his feet, going a different direction. And I just feel like training is all about stay. It's not about stay. It's really about the things they can do. Stay is just an abbreviation for this. It's like a period in the sentence or a comma. It's not the story, right? The story is the dog comes in, stage left, comes in, picks up the cigarette box or whatever, and he goes out the other door. and then he comes in and he jumps on the couch. But when he jumps on the couch, we have to keep this open to interpretation. We can't assume that if a dog arrives at a location, he's automatically going to have to sit, right? That makes no sense whatsoever. I never saw it in a script of Lassie where Lassie enters the scene and sits, right? Sits. Like, why? What's the motivation for sitting? Control. That's not a motivation for the character. That's the motivation for the person working the dog. They want control. They want to make sure the dog doesn't get nervous and fly off the set, right? Well, the trade-off is the dog looks like a robot. He's looking at the trainer. He's not acting naturally because he didn't choose his position. You put him in the position, and now he's feeling like, oh my God, now what am I going to do? Like, where do I go from here? And that's the question you have to ask yourself when you're working with dogs. When you want to train dogs for movies or commercials or television, you always have to think about what's next. Like, where do we go from here? What is the next off ramp? And you never get that in the way people are training because they're training for control and not for movement. And movement's important because if you put a dog in a stay, you got to be able to get him out of that stay. And if you have a dog stop walking along with an actor and then they sit and then the actors start to walk again, now we're wondering why the dog sat at all when we knew that they were just stopping for a moment and then they were going to keep walking. The dog wouldn't sit. Your dog wouldn't sit. He would be looking at you like, are we going to continue moving or are we going to stay here? So always think about your life like a story and the way you're training your dog. Train your dog to make up a scene in your head, like a scene that occurs in your life where the dog comes in and he grabs my remote control for me and he gives it to me and then he jumps on the couch, puts his head down and watches TV with me. Well, that's a series of commands. And if you have a dog expecting to have to stay in the very position that you put him in, they're not going to be able to achieve all those other elements of the scene. And if they do, it's going to look contrived. It's not going to be natural. And it's going to make the dog rely too much on you, on eye contact with the trainer. There's so many times when I'd be on a set where the dog started to look at me and I'd look away. Don't look at me, I'll look away. So, because, it's a game. Sometimes you want to look, but most of the time you don't. You want them to just react to the environment. So a lot of times when I'm working with the dog in a place, on a set with actors, and I want them to be looking at the actors when they're talking. And the thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be having the actors pay. I'll give the command, I'll have the actors pay. So they'll look to the actors for direction or for payment, right? And of course, that changes because if they're looking at the actors too much, I might pay them myself and create that balance between, looking too much in one direction or looking for one person or place for support. And that's where trainers have to get this out of their head, that they don't have to be right in front of the dog. They don't have to be controlling the dog all the time. They really just have to get the dog to perform the act and then let the rest kind of take care of itself. Wouldn't you say, Christophe?
What Robert is talking about, and another big difference with us, part of the paradigm shift, of course, is the location versus position, but also control versus motion. Control versus motion, because you're all trying to train, pet dog people especially, are all trying to train for control. That what is a movie? It's action. And I particularly like action dogs. As our mentor, Carl Miller, was known as an action dog trainer. And of course, I love Rin Tin Tin and Lee Duncan, and that's all action, the greatest action dog that's ever been, actually. So we got to think about motion. We're not thinking about control. We're thinking, okay, this dog's going to go to this mark, this location, hesitate, stand there, look one way or the other, maybe do something. Then what's the next motion that the dog is going to do? He's going to go left, right, back up, go forward. All it has to be, we have to have all these ways for the dog to move, and we also have to give the dog his own way to move. Like we cannot force the dog to do some sort of contrived sort of prancing motion, for example, like you would see in IGP. Doesn't look right. You can't do this. Dog has to look natural. Dog has to move functionally. And so you want to think about motion, because a movie, if you worked on movies, you have scenes. What are scenes? Part of the action, motion. What's happening? What's happening in this scene? Unless it's a deep psychological movie, which generally dogs are usually not a big part of that. Unless it's, I don't know, if there's a, maybe we can have a dog reflect on Sartre or something, I don't know. But generally, dogs are involved in movies that have action where it progresses. There's a story. A storyline is motion. You're moving forward in time. You're moving forward in space. So we're thinking not about control. About this dog has got to be 6 inches away from me. He's got to be in a position next to my knee. He's got to sit every time I stop. Why? Because I want control of the dog. And the same, these are crutches. These are crutches. And the woman who created this for AKC obedience later in life regretted it. She hated it. She thought it also was a crutch, that you had to be a better trainer to have a dog remain standing, which Robert definitely agrees with that completely. And I do too, because we don't want to have to retrain a dog that's been trained to sit every time, because it makes it hell to train a dog to back up and also to walk backwards with you. It's very difficult to orbit around you backwards. There's a lot of things that makes very difficult. We have to rip out all that stuff, and that can take some time. But it's about motion. The dog is moving. There's a storyline. We're not about the control. And what I was saying, okay, the automatic sit, we don't like. It's just a way to control the dog. And so is the focused healing with the dog's head looking up at you at all times when he's moving. This is a crutch, a way to try to have the dog not get distracted by squirrels, other dogs, other people. This is not how dogs move in real life. This is not how a dog should move in a movie. It doesn't look right. Tactical dogs can't do this. They do this, they're going to fall in a hole. They're going to miss the bomb. They're not going to see the enemy. Imagine sled dogs doing this. You're all dead in the first running at nighttime. We are at a higher level, and that's what we're saying. We understand why people are doing this. We get it. It's a crutch. We get it, but admit it. You're looking for control. We're looking for training a dog that can do many, many different behaviors in motion. And these are not a pattern, because one movie sets, one location, filming in one location, you're filming in the snow, filming in the desert. All these are different. These things change. They change everything. But the dog has got to have certain repertoire of behaviors that we've talked about somewhat, but we'll get into it in more episodes. Because again, we get into this. We can give workshops on all this, seminars on all this, because it's very in depth. And I get it that other people don't know about this, and it's totally new to them. But we have to have go withs, come easy, way. There's some people have a trailing, which is different than a go with. Have a trailing. We have the bark on signal. We have the hit your side on your signal. We have a lot of different behaviors that have to be able to be done out of motion. So again, like I said before, if we have the dog climbing the ladder and the script says the dog hesitates and looks and doesn't, it's to give off a certain characteristic of that dog acting. It's not just the dog doing it, it's dog acting. Then you have to be able to halt that dog, what he was doing, not sit that dog or make that dog go in a down. And of course, we're talking about working with dogs hundreds of meters away from us, and even further. If you look at our first episode, you'll see that Rin Tin Tin was a quarter of a mile away, switching directions and weaving in and out of horses' legs. Very dangerous. I'll reiterate that. Very dangerous. I don't think you could film anymore like that with the Humane Society watching or at the film, and not in the USA at least. And I wouldn't risk my dog or any of my dogs in that sort of scene like that. But it's incredible. It's incredible skill. It shows what people did over 100 years ago and why they remain. And that control of having the dog sit, walking next to you and 6 inches away from you, healing at all times, is you can't accomplish what we can accomplish. And this means that you have a freedom with your dog that you don't have if you're looking for control all the time. So, Robert, you want to add anything to that?
Christophe mentioned the speak. First of all, speak almost never is scripted as sitting when they speak, right? Because it kills the urgency of what they're speaking. Most of the time, when Lassie was speaking, he was trying to tell you something. And that meant that he was about to take you somewhere. He was about to show you, follow me, this is where it's happening, right? Well, that doesn't happen in a sit, and no barking happens in a sit. I think the only time I'd ever seen, when I did Dennis the Menace, we had a scene in the back where it was raining, and the dog was sitting on the porch barking. But I was barking him from Mr. Wilson's house, right? And, there was a rain machine going on. So I think in that particular situation, the dog character was like, I hate the rain, this sucks, I'm stuck here, and he's barking, just come rescue me. Now that could be done with a sit. But it's probably the only time I've ever worked with a dog where they spoke from a sitting position. Most of the time it's always standing. There's something going on or something about to happen. And of course, when we get that dog to the couch and let's say they do speak, now they may have to exit. Well, if we're implying a sit, the dog is not going to exit as quickly because they're thinking about something that is assumed that they're supposed to stay. It doesn't work on the set because nothing can be assumed on the set, because as soon as they tell you, oh, that's perfect, that's just the way we want it, now can we do this too? Like, well, I thought you said the dog was just going to sit. So, no, this dog's going to sit, and then he's going to pick up a newspaper, and he's going to jump on the other chair. But all those things have to be taught, and they have to be taught backwards. So when we teach a dog to go to a couch, we're going to teach them to go to the couch, and then we're going to teach all the other things they have to do on their way to the couch. Because that's going to be our safe spot, but it's a location. It's not, their safe spot isn't looking for direction from us. Their safe spot is going back to the end position should something go wrong in between. They'll go back to the location. We can cue them silently, get back on the couch or whatever. Because when you're on a live show, so maybe they don't hit their first mark and something goes wrong, and you can't correct the dog because there's a live audience out there. So you got to be able to send the dog somewhere where they'll be out of the actor's way, and then we can, continue from that spot. It's not over because they didn't hit the first mark or they dropped the object getting up on the couch or whatever. A lot of times the audience won't pick that up, but they'll pick up the dog looking around like, what, I'm lost, what's going on? And in my private training, just to give you an illustration of how it works in real life, when I put dogs on a mark, like a lawn or grass, maybe a cement patch in the middle, like maybe, a plumbing spot or something that stands out amongst everything else. Give a dog a destination. Don't give them a position. Give them a destination. And then give them another destination from that destination. And if you're putting them on a sit all the time, there is no other destination. That's it. That's the end of the story. Dog sits. Story over, right? And I don't want you to be thinking that way as a trainer. I always want you to be broadening your horizon, thinking about, okay, now that he's in that standing state, can I get him to speak from there? Can I get him to come easy? Can I get him, like Christophe said, can I get him to pick up an article and come easy? Or maybe pick up an article and take it to somebody else. Everything is fluid. Everything is kinetic. There's nothing that says, there's no stop signs in dog training. Everything is a yellow light. Maybe you might have to slow or stop briefly. Maybe it's a flashing red light, but it's not a red light that goes on forever. It's a flashing red light that means stop and then go. And too often trainers think about sit as the ultimate destination, the ultimate form of control, when really it's not that impressive, right? I mean, anybody can teach a dog to sit, but can you get a dog to sit and then stand up and then sit again? Because dogs work on emotion, just like we work on emotion. And there's just like when an actor does their lines, if they're reading a script, it doesn't sound the same as if they know the lines. And I want your dog to know the lines, to know the script. Okay,
so a lot of the stuff that we can get into, and Robert was giving away a little bit of the tricks of the trade, as it were, on some of the aspects, and we're trying to give you more of the global picture right now, but you can tell that there's a lot here. This is a very deep, profound subject, and every episode this season, we're going into part of it. But every little part can spend lots of time, because again, you're looking at years and years together combined. We have over 100 years of experience on all of this, and we of course have mentors that don't exist anymore, and you're not going to be able to find them because they died. There are not a lot of people who have a lot of skill in this business who will tell you anything. I don't know why that is, but Robert and I have talked about that. So pay attention, because this is really one of the last chances for you to understand and learn this and apply it to other types of dog training. And a lot of people who are dog trainers say, I'm looking for something else that will help me, that will take me to a different level. I've tried agility, or I've tried sport obedience, and I want to look for something else that's going to help me understand and work with dogs better. Well, this definitely will, because, again, the movie dog training has been around for over 100 years and pioneered a lot of things and used everything that has to work. And again, the paradigm shifts are huge here. Position versus location, control versus motion, and also looking at the dog as an actor, as a living being that has emotions and controls his or her own sorts of walking. For example, every dog walks differently. We walk differently. That the speak, as we're talking about the barking, each dog has a characteristic bark. If you can know Lassie's bark. I mean, you only have to watch about 5 programs and you can pick Lassie's bark out of anybody else's bark. And the same with other dogs who are barking. And as Robert said, one of the big keys there about speaking, speaking indicates there's going to be action's going to occur. Something's going to occur. There's drama that's going to happen, or there's, again, as Robert, it's kind of a joke for us, Timmy fell in the well, right? The bark is like Timmy fell in the well, or Grandpa's having a stroke, it's about the John Deere tractor's about to run him over or something. Or there's, with the Ranger, there was something going to happen, like a tree was going to fall on a raccoon, all of these things. And then in many other movies, it's showing that, hey, the dog is excited, dog wants to escape, or if the dog is, going to show aggression, like with Carl Miller, a lot of the dog work there, when the dog starts barking, it means the dog is going to defend himself or defend somebody. Run, Joe, run, for example, white dog. We can go on with all these examples and take a look at those movies, but stay with us because we're covering a lot of information. You got to go back through this and unpack this and listen to it many, many times. I know this is all new to a lot of people, and that we're covering tons and tons of information. And again, this will take you years as apprentice to put this all together. But we're giving it to you in outline form, and we're talking about the major salient points that you need to keep in your mind, and also why it's different. And maybe it appeals to you. If you want to learn something that other people don't know and see some of the things that we're able to pull off that other people are not able to pull off, then hey, contact us. And like, share, and subscribe. And next episode will be another killer episode.